quite often what those who defend abortion will say, well, the unborn child simply cannot have rights because the unborn child isn't a person. The unborn child, for example, doesn't have thoughts. The unborn child doesn't have plans for the future. It doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have a name very often. It certainly doesn't respond to a name. In some cases, what's being aborted is at most some brain waves and a beating heart. In some cases, just a barely formed nervous system and a beating heart. So usually in abortion, we are not killing something which is a person. But that then raises a couple of questions. What does it mean to be a person? Can one person be more of a person than someone else? Can somebody have a greater right to life than someone else? Because what this argument is saying is, well, if you're not a person until your brain has fully formed, if you're not a person until you are fully aware and until you have thoughts of your own and a mind of your own and an opinion of your own, well, what that seems to say is, well, those who are more intelligent, more aware, more insightful, with better opinions, have a greater right to life than those who don't. So if somebody, for example, develops Alzheimer's disease, they can lose their right to life, or some of their right to life. Or somebody in a coma, do they lose their right to life because they're not fully conscious, because they're not fully awake? Or if somebody is mentally disabled, do they lose their right to life? Are they not fully a person? So if you're struck in a car accident tomorrow and you are rendered in some way mentally disabled, mentally harmed, does that mean that you lose your right to life? That you are not a full person? So this argument that the unborn child is somehow less of a person because of the state of its brain seems dangerous. Suppose you were struck in a car accident and your brain was damaged. But the doctors said, listen, with a little care and a little treatment, your son or your daughter will develop a fully functioning brain over a space of a few years. Within the space of 9 months, they will be awake and aware, and with a little help, they will be a fully conscious, aware human being in the space of a couple of years. Would it be permissible to kill you as your brain was damaged, simply because at that stage you weren't awake and aware? So the situation is, you've been in a car accident, a person has been in a car accident, their brain has been damaged, and it will take 9 months for that person to become fully conscious. And maybe a couple of years to teach them to talk and to walk and things like that. Would they lose their right to life until they were conscious again? Now, I think most people would say no, simply because your brain has been damaged for a period of time, but you will recover given a little bit of care, given a little bit of attention, given that that recovery is practically guaranteed, you have not lost your right to life. Well, that situation is exactly the same situation as an unborn child. The unborn child, given care and time, will develop into a conscious, awake, aware human being. Just like the rest of us, it has precisely the same potential. So if it would be wrong to kill you simply because you were temporarily suffering brain damage, it's wrong to kill an unborn child because temporarily it does not have a fully conscious, awake, aware life. It's the potential that counts. So if it would be wrong to kill you because you're temporarily brain damaged, it is wrong to kill an unborn child because for a period of time it will not have fully developed its senses and its awareness. There's a second danger to this. And this is where we run into, when we talk about a right to life. They give the child a right to life because a newborn child is no more aware than an unborn child. A newborn child is no more aware than an unborn child. So a child which has just been born is not really going to develop very much intelligence until it's around 1 year old. And it's going to take a couple of years until its intelligence is up and around to something that's superior to a dog or a pig. It takes a couple of years for us to be able to outperform higher mammals, chimps, dogs, pigs, animals with a degree of intelligence. They're brighter than most 1 year old children. They respond to simple words. They can understand their name. Animals have this. Now, does that mean that a newly born child, which is completely helpless compared to, for example, a dog, which understands nothing compared to a dog, does that mean it's got less right to life than a dog simply because it hasn't developed yet? And remember, a child which has just been newly born, that has only been alive outside the womb for a couple of days, is no more intelligent than it was when it was alive inside the womb. It's only a matter of days. Does that somehow give that child a greater right to life simply because it's a few days older or because it's outside the womb? It seems that any argument for abortion which says that the unborn child is not a person will have the effect of saying, well, the newborn child is not a person. And so therefore, if it's okay to kill a child inside the womb because it's not a person, well, the same applies to that child outside the womb. It's not awake, it's not aware, it doesn't have opinions, it can't speak, it can't talk, it can't walk, it can't do any of these things. Therefore, it isn't a person. Therefore, we should be allowed to kill it. Therefore, if we discover it's got some sort of disability that the parents weren't aware of until it was born, well, at that stage, should they have the right to kill the child? Well, most people would say no. But then why would we allow the parent to kill the child just because it's inside a womb? Well, over against that argument, there comes this idea of freedom of choice or freedom of control over your body. And this comes back to a woman's rights. The child, when it's inside the womb, is occupying somebody else's space. It's inside a woman's body, so should she not have a right to control her body? There's a very famous little thought experiment. That's where you just use your imagination to think things through. It's called Unplugging the Violinist. And basically it says this: imagine you go to sleep one night. You wake up the next morning and you find that doctors have been at work at you when you're asleep, and there's tubes coming out of your kidneys, and they're running into the kidneys of another human being who's in the bed beside you. And you ask, what on earth's going on? And you're told, well, look, in the middle of the night there was a car crash outside your house, and there was a famous violinist in that car crash, and he was about to die. And we had to very, very quickly do something to keep him alive. So the doctors have this wonderful technique where they can plug somebody whose kidneys are damaged in an accident. They can plug their system into your kidneys and keep them alive. Now here's the bad news. This person's going to have to walk around and follow you around for the next 9 months. They're going to be plugged into you for 9 months before we can unplug them safely. Is that all right? Well, a lot of people would say, well, look, that's up to you. I mean, nobody asked you your opinion. Nobody said, well, do you want a violinist plugged into your kidneys? It might be tragic that this person's going to die if you unplug them, but at the end of the day, it's your body, it's your rights, and if you want to unplug them, you can. And so the argument would be, well, it's the same with a woman of an abortion. She's going to be carrying a child around for 9 months. The child might be a person, but if she doesn't want a person in there, well, it's up to her. It's her body. It's her right to choose. So that's called Unplugging the Violinist. And people talked about that for a while until a few people pointed out, well, there's a problem with that when you're talking about abortion. When we talked about the person who falls asleep at night and has somebody plugged into their kidneys, nobody asks your opinion in that thought experiment. You go to sleep, you wake up, somebody's plugged into you, and nobody asks you, are you okay with this? But when it comes to most cases of pregnancy, people have had consensual sex. And people know where babies come from. And people know that no method of contraception is 100% safe. There's always a risk of pregnancy. So if you've had consensual sex and you know there's a risk of pregnancy, you have effectively invited a person into your body. You have said, well, look, a person could result from what I'm doing. So it seems in that case, consent has been given. So maybe you could say, maybe there's an argument for saying, well, look, in the case of rape, or in the case of abuse, and somebody has got pregnant without their consent, maybe there's an argument for saying, well, though even the unborn child isn't a person, it's in somebody else's body without their consent. Maybe abortion would be allowed in that circumstance. But it isn't clear that where somebody has had consensual sex and gets pregnant, that they could say this child is uninvited. You know where babies come from. You know what the result is of sex. You know what sex is for, what sex is designed to do. Therefore, the child is not uninvited. The child, your body has done exactly what your body is designed to do. It's got pregnant through sex. So therefore, you should not have the right at that stage to abort the child. Then finally, there's arguments about quality of life versus sanctity of life. Sanctity of life says, well, look, you're in God's image. Your life is holy. It's of value whether somebody thinks it's of value or not. Therefore, it is always wrong to kill a human person because their life is sacred. Quality of life, though, is different. It says a person's life is worthwhile so long as they're enjoying it, and so long as they're awake, and so long as they're aware, and so long as they're having a good life. But if you're having a terrible life, your life is not worthwhile. Therefore, it might be okay for you to commit suicide. Or, if you're an unborn child, and it looks like you might have a terrible life, it might be okay to kill you. Now, of course, I hope you can see the dangers and quality of life arguments, because that's got nothing to do with where the child is. If the child unborn or born, it doesn't matter. If it's going to have a terrible life, it's okay to kill it. If it's okay to kill an unborn child because it will have a terrible quality of life, it's okay to kill a newborn child because it would have a terrible quality of life. It would be okay to kill you if you're going to have a terrible quality of life. Suppose you have an accident tomorrow and it takes all sorts of complicated medicine to keep you alive. Some doctor walks in and says, listen, you're going to be in a lot of pain for the rest of your life, therefore we're going to kill you. Quality of life arguments are inherently dangerous, because what they do is they say, well, there's a group of people whose lives are really worth living, and there's a group of people whose lives are definitely not worth living, and in the middle everyone's in a sort of a grey area. It really leaves everyone unsafe unless you're one of those people whose lives are really worth living. And those are always, the smart, wealthy, intelligent people who are having wonderful lives. You can't kill them. But the rest of us plebs who might get into terrible accidents and can't afford to pay for the treatment, well, we could lose our right to life tomorrow. So quality of life arguments are inherently dangerous. So your arguments on abortion are women's rights. Should women have a right to an abortion because it allows them to stay equal to men in the workplace, versus the rights of the unborn child? Secondly is freedom of choice, the woman's freedom to control her own body, versus the child's right to life. So the child's a person, has a right to life. Can the woman's right to control her own body ever overrule the child's right to life? I mean, would there be a case for that in the case of rape, where a woman has been raped and she hasn't invited this person into her body, she hasn't done anything to say she wants a person in her body, and then she's told she's pregnant? Is it okay in that circumstance for the woman's right to control her own body to trump the child's right to life? And then there are those who say life is sacred because it's made by God and you're in God's image. They believe in sanctity of life. And those who say life is worthwhile when you're enjoying it, they believe in quality of life. So it's up to you to form your opinions on that. Abortion's a difficult area, and it's very rare for somebody to come down and say, I'm always for it or always against it. You might find that you're for it in some areas, but not others. You might just simply find yourself very confused. So long as you say in the exam why you're confused,